How's everything going with you today? You've been doing some open world chest runs, and some successful, some not. How do you feel about them so far?
They're fine. Fine. I mean, it's fun to have content that the community does as a group, but it's effectively a hunt train.
Mm-hmm.
I know people like to call these dungeons, but like they're the community doesn't treat them like dungeons. We kind of just slam through them as like a giant herd
Wall.
And like I tried doing one earlier and we didn't have enough people, and people don't want to slow down for mechanics. They just bail. They're like, oh, no.
Yeah.
I'm just here to grab loot and bail. So, yeah, I got to 600, so I now have 3 slots at 600 expertise.
Ooh, nice.
That's a big moment.
Has most of that come from the open world chest runs?
No, I mean, I got a lot from just doing daily gypsum and infused gypsum.
Mm-hmm.
And then, because I wanted those slots to hit 600, so I put a lot there. And then, so they've been going up a little bit there. The chest runs have been a pretty steady, like, overall increase, but it's much less controlled. It's a lot more RNG. And then I've also been I've cleared the new dungeon. And so I've been doing those expeditions pretty regularly. I finally got a clear. If you can't clear a boss, it starts to be a waste of time pretty quick. But we got it down. 4 DPS and a healer. So
there you go. Who needs a tank? Who needs a tank? Just slowing you down is what those tanks are doing.
I do think there are some dungeons where tanks are definitely required. There are definitely other dungeons where you would just rather have the more DPS. So, like, the fact that they've chosen to introduce gear sets is a huge boon to the game.
Oh, yeah.
The fact that they've limited the number of gear sets really makes it where it's like, well, I'd rather have like a DPS spec and a tank spec and a healer spec.
At a minimum, right? Like
at a minimum.
And then you think crafting and gathering spec. That's why it's like, I think the miss that they had with season 1 and the gear sets is they don't just base it off of a base of 5. Like after 5, it really comes down to like how deep are you willing and wanting to go into the game itself. And I think at that point, we're going to charge for additional gear sets because we don't have a subscription. We don't have all these other ways of monetizing you, and it's a one-time cost. Then I think it's a better understood relationship because we've given you like everything that you might ultimately need. If you want to use those 5 for whatever the hell, like go for it. But I think 5 should have been the base level that they gave you right out the gate. And then maybe some through the battle pass, maybe some that are additionally purchased. What do you think?
I mean, I think there's a chance they're saving them for future battle passes, right? You have to kind of think about future-proofing your ideas. Like, what are you going to give us that's of value if you give us everything in season 1?
Yeah.
So, like, if they'd given us, like, mounts and 20 gear sets and transmog in season 1, then, like, season 2 gets here and they're like, it's just a seasonal story. And you're like, well, this sucks.
Well, what do you got for me? It's like, so, you blew your load all the way back in April.
So I think that, like, there isn't an element of, like, I'd be willing to wait 90 days before I criticize too heavily how many they went with. But if you bought the max number and acquired the max number currently available, it's still not enough sets to engage in
the hardcore
community in the game. And that's ignoring crafting gathering. That's saying you are all PvP. That's saying you are all PvE. Let's ignore PvP. And so, like, it's a lot of gear sets because you have these different resistances and different banes and all these different things, and then that starts to play into the housing. The housing has these trophies, and I can only have 5 equipped. How do I go easily swap my 5 based on what dungeon I'm running? You kind of want these, like, an extended gear set of that. At that point, I kind of want my gear set to also change my attributes, to just respec my attributes.
Yeah.
At that point, I also want it to go ahead and, like, I want it to go ahead and tell people what my role is. Go ahead and tell people this is my healer set. When I'm wearing it, I intend to be a healer. And so there's a lot of places it could grow from here.
That was the feedback. Yeah, that was the feedback that I gave, because I was like, I'd like to assign the role that I'm in based off the gear set that I equip, just as a removing of an additional step, because you brought up the attributes, you brought up, like, obviously the specs on the weapons themselves. The devs have talked about that, but they've talked about that as this is on the backlog. This is something that we're looking into. And in terms of like what we feel is going to be the immediate, like, real positive impact was gear. And I actually, like, completely agree with that. But your your feedback is absolutely echoed by the community, because it's like, oh, now we have this. Obviously, this is the next natural evolution. And I think a simple and hopefully like a quick turnaround, because you can go in and assign yourself your role. Like that's a simple action. And so I think about that in terms of a macro, like just add that, because they gave you so many things. You can assign your food, you can assign like your weapon, your sub weapon, all of your, gear. Like just allow me to like flag that piece of gear, that set as I'm going to be a healer today. I'm going to be the tank. I'm going to be this, because you can still go out and reflectively change it. Game the Grave over in the Twitch chat says, sounds like Chris is very much enjoying New World. Is that, how do you feel about that? Are you enjoying the game so far, outside of obviously the critiques that you and I share?
Yeah, I enjoy it. There is definitely like a very finite set of goals where I feel like I could just put it down. As opposed to like Final Fantasy 14, I feel like I get these breaks and I already know when I'm coming back. Like if I wanted to, I could stop till 6-4, but I couldn't stop further than that. And I have things I want to get done before 6-4. I have like long-term goals that it'd be great to get done between now and then. But like the longest I could put down the game would be 6 weeks. And this, I feel like I could put down the game 10 weeks at a time.
Easy, without even worrying about it. Yeah,
and that's assuming the next season has something that I want. I could see a world where the next season doesn't have something that I want. So, and if I go two 10-week cycles, two 12-week cycles without something I want, that really becomes how you forget about a game. Just because we all have a lot going on in our lives, and if you haven't done something for 20 weeks, is it still something you do?
And then also the same kind of boat, you have a lot of new games looking to come in and take a slice of the pie. And that's where will be interesting to see in the long-term health of the genre. If you think about the whole genre itself, like, are we bringing in new players along with it, or are we just borrowing and stealing players from other games? Is the overall, pie growing, or are we just kind of shifting around figures on the pie itself? And that's like, you bring up some really interesting points, especially as it relates to the seasons. And I wonder, and the question to you is that how much of that also is that with 14, you have that already known established pattern. You have a spreadsheet, where New World in and of itself, even if we could say that the next season starts in 85 days or whatever the countdown is right now, do we really trust that they're going to start it in 85 days, or is it going to be 95, or is it going to be 100? Like, that's essentially where I think New World has to do a much better job, and the devs have to do a better job at, if they communicate a date, that needs to be well understood and trusted, because like you said, you've got other things going on in your life, right? And if something's going to miss by a week, that could easily miss into, Blue Protocol, Throne of Liberty, Final Fantasy 14 patch, 6.4, FanFest. Like, there are things that at some point, like just this year alone, Wayfinder, like Diablo 4, like we could, it is honestly like, if you like online RPGs and playing RPGs with your friends, like this is already probably going to be one of the years that you look back on and say, holy crap, I can't believe so many big titles were released in just a year alone. But what do you think?
It definitely feels like there's a lot there, and at some point there will be a fatigue element. I think that's why the biggest, best games tend to have just a huge gap between them and the next tier of games. Because what happens is, it's like, I don't even have time to look into, much less try, much less like really give an honest shot at 20 games. So let me just ask Google what the best 5 games are, and then I'll just look at those 5. And so you have like, what happens to game number 6, what happens to game number 10, they just get left in the dust. So there's a very different tier, which makes sense. So I think we're going to get to that point where, you told your friends that you were going to pre-order Diablo, and you like playing New World. New World pushes a patch back into season 1 of Diablo, and you're like, well, then I don't care. Then I don't care, like, because I already made a commitment elsewhere. So I will say, like, I understand why
Diablo launches. That's what I'm going to play. Not only because, like, exactly what you said, I believe very heavily in communicating those facts. Like, one of the things that we've talked about over on stream as a part of New World is that I will never transfer off of Orfina. The only way that name changes is if we get merged in with another server at some point in the future, which could happen. But it's that public commitment, like, hey, this is where we're playing, so that if somebody uses like their free transfer token or they spend money to come and game with us, which you guys are more than welcome to. The community for the New World side is been really active. It's as I would expect it to be around this season. I think overall over the course of the season 1, we'll see, obviously the tail dip down. Season 2, transmog, raid, like all that stuff, we'll have that natural inflection point to reinvite people back in, but we'll still be here. We'll still be plugging away. And same thing goes, that the fact is, like, yeah, I told the group, like, yeah, I pre-ordered Diablo. I'm excited for playing it. That's where, when that launches, that's where I'm going to go spend some time, because I think that's both fun, healthy, and at the same time, I don't want somebody to be like, oh, Brian said he was pre-ordering Diablo. He never showed up. Like, what happened, And I don't want to end up doing that to anybody in this case. So Chili's asking, can you move from fresh start servers now? I think if you can't, that is on the way. I think they said they're going to be addressing some of the merging and stuff like that here after they kind of see how the population drops from season 1.